Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have the impressive David Scrimshaw. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, Christian Awake. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But people, you want to check out his YouTube page by searching Dave Scrimshaw. There, you're going to find more information on David, more videos that have been posted, but you're also going to find some information on another book that David has written. And this one is called Life is a Pop Quiz. Are you passing the test? I love that title. I mean, it's so fantastic and it gives you a great insight into what to expect. But both books are, again, available through Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, pretty much any online book reseller. Head on over there today, pick up your copies, and get lost in all of it. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out that David was brought to our network, People of Distinction today, by one of the best advertising firms in the business. And people you already know, I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. So for my writers out there listening in, if you have gone through your process creating your masterpiece and now you need help moving that book you just developed, well, contact ARP. I'm telling you, they're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all of the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have David here on the line. People, get to know the name David Scrimshaw. I'm telling you, he is a force to be reckoned with, and his book is something magnificent. Christian Awake is an analysis on a number of levels. It's going to be an analysis of the Bible. It's an analysis of churches. It's an analysis of our everyday human family, our society, our community, and how many of us are spiritually asleep. Okay? And now that's a big phrase. I mean, that gets to a lot. But I'm telling you, people, I know the book is called Christian Awake, but it could very easily just be called Awake, because this is something for everyone. Whether you're a Christian, a non-believer, or you follow a different religion, certain words can be interpreted differently, but the message, the foundation, is something we can all get behind. Now, I'm telling you, this book has a lot to offer when you just pose that question of are we spiritually asleep? First and foremost, what does that mean? Secondly, how do we wake up? These are profound questions that we're going to answer here for you today. But keep in mind, people, we're only going to scratch the surface. By the time we've concluded, you're going to run to Amazon and Barnes & Noble and purchase your copies, because you're going to understand how valuable of a book this truly is and why you need to add it to your shelf. And at the end of the day, don't take my word for it. Take David's. It's his book. He's written it. And he's going to be able to articulate everything much better than I ever could. So sit back, strap in, and have your notebooks ready. David, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing fine, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. David, listen, the pleasure is all ours. I think what you've done here by comprising this book is, no pun intended, is going to wake a lot of people up. Okay? It's really going to raise the awareness. And of course, that was the purpose of your book. That was the point of it. And we are so thankful that you've embarked upon that journey. And thank you again for being here with us. Before we jump into the book, David, tell our listening audience a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I was fortunate in the mother and father that I have. And Dad was the chief physiologist in the Navy. He was in charge of training all the pilots in the Navy for high-altitude survival. In fact, when I was a little kid, John McCain went through his chamber back in the early 60s.
Wow.
He knew White, Grissom, and Chafee, that on the first Apollo that was that exploded.
Yeah.
I used to stand out in my backyard and be able to watch John Glenn go up in the Mercury series. When I was in high school, I worked for Congressman Bennett one summer as a volunteer, and the next summer I was at the executive office building for Nixon, and I worked in the presidential record book section. And the reason for all that was because my dad worked at the Bureau of Medicine and Surgery. That's what it was. And that was right across from the State Department. And so he would take me over to the EOB, which is called the Eisenhower Building today. And I'd work down there 2 days a week. So I had a lot of experiences like that. When I went to college, you remember the Walton series?
Yeah.
I got to know the original John Boy at one time before he died. I talked with him. Let's see. In seminary, I was with Mike Huckabee was there the first year I was there, and Rick Warren was in my graduating class. I was an Air Force chaplain for 6 years. I was also a contract chaplain at a state prison in Florida. I've had a lot of experiences. Somebody might say the guy can't keep a job.
David, I'll tell you one thing. Nobody is saying that you can't keep a job here, okay? Because I look at that and I'm just, man, the thought that keeps coming to my mind is people with a background like that, how could David not grow to be a person of distinction? I mean, that is a pretty distinct background. My goodness. Now, I'm transitioning here, David, because I hear all of these things that you're saying and your background and your influences, but I'm not seeing the correlation here to this book and the inspiration behind it. You got to connect the dots for me. How did we get here to Christian Awake?
Well, I've been a pastor, and I was ordained in 1978. And I've had a lot of experience with churches, congregations, inmates, military members. And when you're working with people for that many years, hopefully you learn some things. And one of the things that I learned was that, and I also was a public school teacher and a college instructor. Wow. And one thing that I've learned is that people really don't like to read. I was a reading teacher once. And so the reason that this book is short is because I wanted it to be short. In fact, I had editors telling me, hey, this is a great book. Well, you need to make it longer and put more pages. I think they were saying they could get more money for it if it was longer. But I said, no. People don't really like to read, and so I've got to condense it down. It's like Campbell's condensed soup, Mm-hmm. You always have to add water or milk to it or something. Well, this is condensed down. But the inspiration for me is my Lord. I mean, he saved me when I was 18 years old, and I've served him, sometimes not always all that well, but I've served him for all those years, and I wouldn't go back and want to do anything else.
Yeah. David, thank you very much for that. And here's where I see a lot of the power in your book is the conversation that will ensue after reading it, and also the awareness that will be raised because of it. So you don't necessarily need to write a 200-page book for people to get the message. The way you've done it in this short, condensed manner is now going to, it packs a punch, but it also is going to create conversation and awareness. And that, I think, is really the powerful point to take from all of this. David, without further ado, the anchor, of course, is your magnificent book, Christian Awake. Tell us a little bit more about the words on those pages.
There's two words that are found in the New Testament, and they both are translated in our English translations, which I have to say our English translations aren't the best. But one of them is Gregorio. If you've ever known anybody by the name of Gregory, that's what the name Gregory is based on, and it really means alert. But in Matthew 24, it's used to translate it as keeping awake. And 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, it's Paul is using the word to refer to spiritual alertness. And Peter, and in 1 Peter and in Revelation, it is translated as being watchful. Well, it's the idea that we believers, and I would say everybody should be, but we believers should be watchful. We should be alert to our conditions, our own relationship with God, our relationship with other people, the relationship with God's creation. We ought to be watching that. Mm-hmm. But then there's another word that Jesus uses, and it's in a parable about 10 virgins that are waiting up for a marriage supper. And that's in Matthew 25. It's the next chapter. And they are told to be watching. It's a gyro. And in Ephesians chapter 5, it means being awake and not lazy. And in 2 Peter, it means to stir up the mind. So this idea of being alert and awake is really kind of all through this book. Some is in the Old Testament. Most is in the New Testament. But that's those two words are kind of what we keep looking at in different portions of the book.
People, again, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Check out his YouTube page, Dave Scrimshaw. You have to head on over there. You got to pick up this book. It's called Christian Awake. Check out his other book, Life is a Pop Quiz. Are You Passing the Test? Both of them are wonderfully informative and really eye-opening. I mean, just enlightening to no end. And I love it. This is something you need to get on board with. David, my next question here, and it's a two-part question, but it really hones into the heart of the book. And I think you've already started to go into one of the questions in your previous answer when you're talking about being alert and things that we need to be mindful of. Well, Dave, I want to get to the heart of the matter here. Clarify for our listening audience, what do you mean when you say that we are spiritually asleep? Talk to us a little bit more about what that looks like.
I'm trying not to repeat things that are in the book because I want them to read it. But I one of the examples is Samson. What's interesting is Samson's father's name meant, for lack of a better way of saying it right now, is he was sleepy, which is kind of interesting that his father's name was that. And we all know what happened to Samson when he did go asleep. Yeah. With Delilah, she cut his hair. And one of the things about Samson was that the angel of the Lord had told his Samson's parents that he was going to be a Nazirite, and there were certain things that he wasn't supposed to do. And Samson violated every agreement except for one, to cut his hair. He wasn't supposed to, not only was he not supposed to drink wine, but he wasn't supposed to even eat grapes. He wasn't supposed to, shall we say, fool around, especially with women who weren't from the tribe of Israel. He violated every agreement except for the one. And when the last one went, and this is key, when Delilah woke him up after cutting his hair, and he didn't realize his hair had been cut, she said, "The Philistines are upon you." And he said, "Well, I'll just go out and shake them off like I always do." but he didn't realize the Lord had departed from him. And friends, that's where we are in America today. We don't realize that the Lord has departed from us because we've departed long ago from him.
Wow. Well, David, a follow-up question is, how do we wake up?
The Bible does talk about that, and the book talks about that too. But I would tell you, if there was somebody out there that they are able to listen to this, but they don't have a couple of bucks for a book, I would tell them that there is one scripture that's found in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament, and it says, "Do not forsake the assembling together of yourselves, as it has become a custom for some of you." And I can tell you that the churches today, especially ever since that disease that we won't mention here, that went through our world a few years ago, the churches, the attendance continues to fall. And when you're not spending time with either the Lord or his people, you're violating what God's word tells you to do. And the only way to wake up is to start doing the things that God told you to do, and that is to talk with him, to read his word, and to assemble together with other believers.
People, I'm telling you, this, as I listen to David talk, this book is so much larger than a literary creation. This is a movement. This is a lifestyle change. You want to get on board with what's happening here, and you don't want to miss your chance. I could sit here, I could talk to David for hours. I'm thoroughly engulfed in this book and the subject matter that we're discussing here, but I want to give him an opportunity prior to us closing out here. As I mentioned, David has written a second book. This one is called Life is a Pop Quiz. Are you passing the test? David, as we start to close out here, give us a brief synopsis of this other narrative and what to expect.
Well, that book was really interesting to me because one time when Dad and I had come home from church, we always picked up a local newspaper on Sunday, and I had sat down and I was reading the editor's comments, and she had said something about her experience in school, and she really didn't like pop quizzes, and immediately, not only did the idea of life being a pop quiz come in, but and I know people probably say, "What are you talking about?" But I had kind of a flash before me of all these pages of a book. For just a split second, I could see all the pages of this book. Life is a pop quiz. And so it only took me about 2 weeks to write that one. It's designed kind of around the way that that textbooks are made. And you read what the chapter is about, and then there's a series of questions, fill in the blank questions at the end of most of the chapters. And then in the back of the book are the answers, like we used to have in our old math books, And of course, that was only the odd numbered questions were answered. They wouldn't give you all the answers. But this one gives you the answers for all of the questions, in case you're a little confused.
There you go.
but the main thing is that it's to try to get people to realize that when you're going through some really terrible things, it's a quiz. God gives you quizzes, and then sometimes the devil tries to get you away from God, and he puts you through some things too. But whether it is God doing it, or as it was in Job's case, the devil doing it, God has a plan for you, and that is that you pass everything. In fact, that you pass with flying colors.
Yeah.
And because that brings glory to him.
People, listen, I have a question for all of you. What are you waiting for? The time is now. I mean, the precipice is here. Christian Awake. Life is a pop quiz. Are you passing the test? These books are really the diving board to set you off on your path of awakening. Right? This is something special. And I know that so many of you out there listening in right now, you're just like me. You are convinced you don't need any more talking. Now it's time for action. So I'm going to say it for you once again. It's Amazon. It's Barnes & Noble. Check out YouTube by searching Dave Scrimshaw. Get everything that this man has to offer. Christian Awake was the anchor for today's interview, but check out his other book, Life is a Pop Quiz. Are you passing the test? Both of these narratives are so informative. They're set up to help you reach success. This is some pretty magical things. You're going to want to take advantage of it. David, as we close out, man, again, it has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Thank you, Benji.